And if you are looking to possibly apply for an operating grant and want to learn more about the process, you are in the right place. If you are new to AmeriCorps and have never applied for AmeriCorps and are interested in applying, you would have to go through a planning grant first. We had that session at 10 o'clock this morning, and I'm not sure if the recording is up, but it will be up soon. If it's not up yet, within the next few days. So you can actually access that through our website. Lisa will put our website address in the chat so that you can access that, that information. Also, for those of you who are here, I'm assuming that you're either a recompete or a current planning grant, or a prior planning grant who may not have gotten funded for an operating grant, but you're taking another shot at it. Those are the ones that would be here. And recompeting programs are those programs who are in their third year currently of running their AmeriCorps program, and now they're applying for a new 3-year cycle starting in September. So you're in the right place if you are one of those individuals. Now, I am not going to go over AmeriCorps 101. I am assuming that if you've been running AmeriCorps or you've been participating in a planning grant, you should know the ins and outs of AmeriCorps by now, or at least theoretically. But we do have a recording. We will have a recording available on the website for AmeriCorps 101. Lisa will have that up shortly, probably within the next day or 2 days, definitely by next week sometime. And so you can always review if you want to, you know, go over that again. But this is basically just to go over the process of how to apply and kind of the ins and outs. I pre-recorded this yesterday, this presentation, but at the end, we will be open for Q&A. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, please hold those, write them down, because at the end we will have a live Q&A session. And again, this whole presentation will be put on our website so that you can access it again if you really wish to go through it again. Lisa, you could start, but one more minute. I have one more thing to say. This was pre-recorded, but I do wanted to say that I forgot. All right, senior moment. Let's just go through with I know. Let's just go through with the presentation, and when I remember, I'll jump in.
Good luck.
Okay.
Hello there. Welcome to the New Jersey Commission's NOFO presentation for operating formula grants. Operating grants are for programs that are recompeting for a new 3-year cycle, or for current planning grants, or anyone who's had a planning grant in the past couple of years who is trying to achieve an operating grant. Anyone who is here as a new applicant, you would only be able to apply for the planning grant at this time. So you would have to go back to the website and take a look at that pre-recording at this time for planning grants, because new programs can only be funded for planning grants at this time. Okay. If you have most of your recompeting programs, so you've been engaged in several months of planning, so you should have a good sense of what AmeriCorps is all about. I will not be talking about the ins and outs of AmeriCorps, but we do have a recording that will be available on our website on AmeriCorps 101 that you may wish to review if you want to have a refresher on that. You know, the ins and outs of things like what AmeriCorps members benefit from, the education award information, the other kinds of benefits like childcare or healthcare and those kinds of things, how many terms they can do. All of that information is contained in that AmeriCorps 101 training. So again, please feel welcome to go and review that. It is there as a recording, so you could look at it at any time. Since this is a pre-recorded session, you can view this session at any time. But for the actual live presentation, there will be a live Q&A session at the end of this recording on February 15th as well. So if you have questions, just at the end of this recording, you can ask those questions as well. And those will be also recorded. I anticipate that most of you have run an AmeriCorps program for at least 3 years. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. I will point out some of the things that have changed, but I think that most of you pretty much know the kinds of things that you need for AmeriCorps. But again, I will try to point out some of the changes and things that are just specific to operating grants. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the formula. NOFO, this is a presentation that is somewhat brief. I do urge you to please read the actual NOFO because that contains more information than I can possibly present here today and in greater detail. And you want to have all of that information so that you can submit a successful application that can potentially be funded. For this presentation, we're going to focus on Section 1, which is the New Jersey Commission Grant Information and Timeline that is consistent for all applicants. Section 2 is for new planning grants only, so you do not need to read through that section in the NOFO. Again, it's only for new applicants who are planning to pursue a planning grant for the year 24-25. Section 3 is for operating grant applicants, and that is for programs that are recompeting, that are formula fixed recompeting, or who are current planning grants, or again, planning grants that were previously funded but have not been able to achieve an operating grant. Okay. All right, Section 1, the Commission's grant information and timeline for all applicants. At this time, this is the timeline that we're working with. On February 5th, we issued our flyer and our announcement of opening up this NOFO. For those of you who have been funded under Formula, you do know that Formula only competes, those applications only compete at the state level. So you do not, whatever you score in this application process, those applications will not go to National AmeriCorps for another competition. They will stay right here in New Jersey. So you'll be competing against other applicants from New Jersey only. On February 15th will be the NOFO TA session. The one at 10 o'clock is for planning grants. The one at 2 o'clock is for operating grants for recompetes and for current planning grants. And on February 23rd will be the technical assistance session on evidence, logic models, and performance measures. I strongly urge you to, again, even if you've been running an AmeriCorps program, please listen to that session as well. Things change up. Like, for instance, one of the changes is that AmeriCorps is no longer using the terminology theory of change. They are using community and logic models. You're going to see that throughout this presentation. So I just want to emphasize that you should review that information on February 23rd, which is being presented by CREES also. On March 8th is the notice of intent to apply due to our commission. There is a form and there's a link in that NOFA, so you can use that to submit your notice of intent to apply. On March 22nd, the formula applications are due to commission on eGrants by 4 o'clock. And that's for the new and recompeting applicants only and current planning grants who are applying for an operating grant. Again, the magic date is March 22nd by 4 o'clock, so do not miss that. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties before then, please contact the help desk, get a ticket number to make sure that you have evidence that you did try to submit. And then, contact us and let us know what the status is and keep trying to submit. Again, if the help desk is not able to help you right away, please contact us and let us know. We'll try to troubleshoot with you as well. Just let us know. Okay. And then on March 25th, staff review of applications and budgets are begun for all of these applications. And then the technical assistance for our readers will be on March 25th, where I will be providing the same information that I'm providing to you today. I'll be providing for the readers as well. March 28th, we have the formula applications due to commissions only for continuation applicants. Okay, so those are programs that are only in their first or second year of running their AmeriCorps program. If you are in your third year, you do need to apply and submit your application by March 22nd. Okay, April 1st is the staff review of applications for continuations. That's when we begin our review of continuations. They're pretty much a week apart. Okay, so we will have all of the new applicants and the recompeting applications come in on the 22nd, and then pretty much a week later, all of the continuations, and that's so that we can generate all of the information with the new applications to go to our readers, and then we can concentrate on continuations and getting those reviewed. On April 9th is the Reader Arena session. This is only for new and operating programs, applications, and we will advise you pretty much soon after that whether or not you were able to score sufficiently high to get submitted for the commission board vote. Generally, CREs will do some reviews of some of the applications. We will provide feedback if that is the case, that they have feedback for you, or some of our readers may also have feedback. You will probably have an opportunity to do some revisions, which would be due back to us on April 22nd, if there's any revisions. On May 1st, the commission board vote on selected applicants and continuations. And then on May 10th is my target due date to submit the formula package to AmeriCorps. Even though we actually have a drop dead date of May 17th, when we actually have to have them in no later than May 17th. But I always like to submit early because eGrants gets glitchy and, you know, all kinds of things. So May 10th is my goal. Okay. The Formula NOFO will fund the following types. This Formula NOFO types of grants: planning grants. Planning grants are only for 1 year. For the operating grants, you will be applying again for another 3-year cycle. I do not know yet how much we have in formula funding. We have not been given that information yet. So right now, you know, we're going to be looking at probably the amounts that we were funded for last year, or our allocation from last year. Please know that we will not have, or we haven't definitively heard from AmeriCorps National whether or not we can use unexpended ARP funds, ARPA funds, but right now it looks like we may not be able to, so we will only have our formula allocation. So I anticipate that we will not have as much funds this year as we did last year without those ARPA funds. Okay, just letting you know, so which makes things a little more competitive. So you really, really need to submit a very good application if you want to float to the top. Okay. Cost reimbursement grants are available, as well as formula fixed. Formula fixed, we only have one program that's formula fixed. You have to have had at least one full 3-year cycle of an operating grant in order to do formula fixed. Okay, and the difference is that you don't have to report on your budget, and you don't have to report on your match. However, to run that program successfully, you will need to have matching funds. Right now, we still have match waivers. Formula fixed grants are not eligible for those match waivers. Cost reimbursement is, and you can actually apply for that once you've been selected. I have not seen any programs yet be turned away or denied match waivers, but you have to get selected first and then make the request for that waiver. Okay. All right. So because there are 2 different types of grants that we're going to be giving out, planning grants and operating grants, these are the different sections of the NOFO in the left-hand column. And then there is a next to either planning grant or operating grant if that section applies to you. So for the New Jersey Commission information timeline, it applies to both planning grants and operating grants. Planning grant applications obviously is only for the planning grants, and Section 3 is only for the operating grants for recompetes and current planning grants. 2024 mandatory supplemental information, contains the different concepts that are contained within the NOFO or the various definitions. You should be familiar with those, and if not, please read it. And both planning grants and operating grants should read through that information. Section 5 is the 2024 AmeriCorps State and National Application Instructions. If you've done AmeriCorps before, you should be familiar with most of this language, but it's there for you to help you to get your application into eGrants. Again, it is applicable to both planning and operating. Section 6 is the AmeriCorps State and National Performance Measures. Planning grants do not have to submit performance measures, but operating grants will have to. So you will need to refer to that. Again, if you want to make changes in your performance measures from previous years, or if you want to expand on something else or whatever, please review that. There is a checklist there that I highly recommend that you look through. And so on. And then the Section 7 is the Applicant Operational and Financial Management Survey. That is a requirement, and that is online. So you would submit that to us as well for both of those. Okay. All right. NOFO application focus areas are the same. Economic opportunity, education, healthy futures, veterans and military families, disaster services, and environmental stewardship. You should be familiar with these. They haven't really changed. So I'm just going to go through this quickly. I'm just going to, but they're there. They're in the NOFO. So please read that. I'm not going to talk about those at this point because, again, you're recompeting or you're planning a current planning program, and you should be familiar with those already or have an idea of what you already want to apply for. Eligibility, all of these individuals are eligible except for for-profits. So again, if you're recompeting, you're probably eligible. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at the awarded slots, the outer limits, and so on, period of performance. So planning grants don't have to worry about minimum or maximum MSYs. They're only going to apply for a set amount of up to $85,000. For cost reimbursement or formula fixed grants, for an operating grant, you have to apply for a minimum of 8 MSYs. If you want to go for less than that, you need to engage in a conversation with the commission staff. So contact us if you feel like, you know what, we don't think we can do 8, we can do 7 or whatever MSYs. And as you know, an MSY is basically the same as an FTE. So it's the equivalent of 1,700 hours for a full-time AmeriCorps member. But if you're planning to submit for less than full-time slots, of course, that may mean you're going to have more than 8 members. You may have, up to 20, 25, whatever that number is, that is the equivalent of 8 MSYs. The maximum number is 15 MSYs. However, if you are a recompeting program with 6 years of funding or more, you may propose 18 MSYs, okay, up to 18. And then the maximum funding for operating programs is $375,000 based on that 15 MSYs times the maximum cost per MSY of $25,000. Now that has gone down from last year, which was $27,000. So it's only $25,000 this year. And when we asked why there was a drop, National AmeriCorps basically gave something about the consumer index, an explanation about the consumer index, and that's why it had dropped. So whatever at this point. So you're working with a cost per MSY of $25,000. So for 15 MSYs, you can only apply for up to $375,000. If you're proposing 18 MSYs, it's $450,000 that you can apply for up to that. Okay. The period of performance is 3 years, starting September 1st, 2024, up until August 31st, 2027. Okay. Electronic application submission in eGrants, that hasn't changed. We are moving towards modernization, which may be in place by fall, but we're not sure. That would probably be for our competitive process. But right now we're still working with eGrants. And here's the eGrants hotline number in case you need, have any issues. It's there at this point. Okay. Okay. The application sections, the following elements must be present in your application. The face sheet, the narrative section, the executive summary. Again, please make sure that you copy and paste that information. Don't add any information, extraneous information in there. Just that template that you typically do for the executive summary. And then the program design section, organizational capability, and the cost effectiveness and budget adequacy. Now, in prior years, the budget, all you've had to put is see budget. Now that has changed. You do have to put in some budget information in there. But what they've done is that all of the information on the logic model will only be in the logic model section, except for the definition of the community problem. So it kind of is a wash. But we'll see that once I start going through the criteria and for the scoring. Okay, you will be filling out the logic model. The logic model used to be 3 pages. You had up to 3 pages, but now you have up to 8 pages for the logic model. And the rationale is that you won't be putting in any information in the narrative. On the logic model, you're going to be putting it all into that logic model section. Okay. Performance measures, you have to fill those out as you typically have done in the past. Again, for those of you who are current planning grants, if you need assistance with this, there's instructions within the application, instructions on how to do this. If you get stuck, go to the help desk. If they're not able to help you right away, again, you can send us an email. If I have the time, I will hop on a Zoom with you. But it's pretty self-explanatory. The instructions are very detailed. You should be able to get through the performance measure and get them in. If you have your logic model all laid out, it's pretty easy to just pull that information from the logic model and putting it into your performance measures. And then you have your budget. Under the continuation changes links, when you put in your application, you would enter NA for that field for the clarification. And then, of course, you have the authorization assurances and certifications that you do have to fill out. It's very simple. All right. Page limitations. There are 2 sections with mandatory page limits, the narrative and the logic model. You still have the 10 pages for the narrative, okay, that you cannot exceed. And what counts in the narrative, again, is the executive summary face sheet, the program design, organizational capacity, and the cost effectiveness and budget adequacy sections of the application. Okay, always check in the review link to make sure that you do not exceed those 10 pages. And, again, you will lose points if you go over those 10 pages. So please make sure that you go to that review link and make sure that you're within those 10 pages. Okay. The application limit doesn't include, as in the past, the budget, the narrative portion of the evaluation plan, logic model performance measures, or any other materials that you may have. Okay, the logic model may not exceed, now this says 3 pages. I apologize, this is an error here. Sorry, let me go back. It's 8 pages. Okay, so I have to make that correction in this. So you have 8 pages. It is corrected in the NOFO, but you have up to 8 pages when printed with the application from the review tab in eGrants. And I'll make sure that this is corrected and sent to you, this PowerPoint. Okay. Please note the length of a document in word processing software may be different. Okay. So make sure that you're not relying just on the word processing software count. of 10 pages or the 8 pages or whatever. And just make sure that you adhere to, again, 10 pages for the narrative and 8 pages for the logic model. Okay. Submission of a notice of intent to apply is requested and is due Thursday, March 8th. And then there's a form there for you to be able to fill out and to submit that with this information. Okay. Again, the due date is March 22nd at 4 o'clock, no later than 4. Again, if you have any problems, please contact the help desk, get a ticket, make sure you get a ticket number so that we know that it's not that you just waited until the last minute and you just didn't have time to get it in. Okay. Additional documents, applicants are required to submit the following additional documents by the application submission date: online financial management survey, the evaluation briefs, any evaluation briefs, reports, or studies. Please refer to the evidence-based section for detailed instructions by evidence tier. This is contained also in the mandatory supplemental guidance, which talks about the evidence tiers. Depending on which tier you select, you would then submit studies and your evaluations information. Please follow instructions in the formula NOFO on how to submit additional documents. Okay, that's contained in the NOFO. Unique identity. Okay, make sure that your SAM registration is up to date, because we cannot fund you if this and your unique entity identifier are not up to date. So that is our due diligence, and we will be, we'll have to contact you. Generally, AmeriCorps National will ask us to check this ahead of time. So please make sure that this information is as up to date as possible. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the criteria. So these are the different sections. So for those of you who applied for competitive, just be aware that these points have all changed. Most of them have changed because I do try to make the formula process a little bit less onerous for the formula process than what it is for competitive. For competitive, they're very prescriptive in terms of, their point systems and the information that you have to submit. We as a commission do not have flexibility with that, but we do have flexibility with the formula process. We can change the points. We can, add information that we want. We can take away information from some areas. We didn't want to make it too different because we're hoping that formula programs will then go on to competitive programs, applications at some point, but we are trying to make it less onerous for the formula process. Okay, so the community problem and logic model, again, this is where you used to talk about theory of change and logic model. Now they want you to talk about the community problem and then develop your logic model from that as well. And that's 20 points. That's pretty much the same as it's always been. Evidence tier is 5 points. We've definitely decreased this from the competitive application. Evidence quality. So evidence tier and evidence quality together are 12 points, and that's considered your evidence base. Okay, so that's 2 sections there, the evidence tier, the evidence quality, and then the performance measures. The competitive process does not give points for performance measures, but we feel that for formula, we want to have a point system for that. So we made that 8 points for your performance measures. And then member experience, again, that also was very low in the competitive process. I think it's something like 4 points or something like that. We made it 10 points, and we added information that we're requesting on that. Organizational capability. So it used to be 4 different sections you had to fill under organizational capability. For this, it's only organizational background and staffing and member supervision for 13 points, so a total of 25 points there. And then cost effectiveness and budget adequacy is, again, this used to be something that you just had to put in the budget. Now you will have some narrative here. You want to talk a lot, make sure that in your budget, you talk a little bit about your member recruitment costs for 7 points, your member retention costs, budget alignment to the program design. So you want to make sure that your budget reflects what the narrative states it will be doing. In other words, no extraneous costs that are not related to your program design, and that your budget is accurate. Okay, so I'll go over each one of these. And again, the executive summary is just a template you'll fill out, copy and paste into your narrative section. Please note the following information will be reviewed at the February 23rd session that's conducted by CREES on evidence, logic models, and performance measures. So I am not going to, in this presentation, go over this a lot, especially the evidence definitions, which is a lot of information. You will, again, you should go to that session on February 23rd. Okay. All right. The community problem and logic model is the first section. The applicant will provide a detailed summary of the community problem. So this you'll put in the narrative portion of the application. The role current or historical inequities faced by underserved communities may play in contributing to the problem. Again, you want to make the problem significant. You're addressing a meaningful problem in the community, and you want to be able to substantiate that with information from the CDC's Social Vulnerability Index, and communicate the severity and prevalence of the problem. If you are, let's say, a disaster preparedness or an environmental focused program, and you don't find evidence here under Social Vulnerability Index, please explain that and give us information based on your research as to why that is a problem in your community, and how you can substantiate that. I don't know why, but apparently AmeriCorps National likes to use the CDC's Social Vulnerability Index, which it's been kind of noted that that doesn't always provide sufficient information on some of the focus areas. Okay. All right, community problem logic model continued. The applicant's intervention is likely to lead to the outcomes identified in the organization's logic model. Okay, so important, this is a shift. No narrative, okay, is needed other than what is contained within the logic model. This is why they're giving you 8 pages to identify this information. So you don't have to put it in the narrative when you talk about the logic model. You do have to put in the narrative the community problem information, okay? They want an explanation of that in the narrative. But for the logic model itself, you do not have to have any narrative. You just have to contain it within that logic model section in eGrants, up to 8 pages, okay? And then you'll include this information, your inputs or resources that are necessary to deliver the information, but are not limited to locations or sites where the members will provide services, the context in which the intervention is delivered, or the setting where the intervention is delivered, the number of AmeriCorps members who will deliver the intervention, and the characteristics of the AmeriCorps members, including specific knowledge, skills, and abilities required to implement the intervention. Okay, the core activities that define the intervention or program model that members will implement or deliver, including the duration, the dosage, and the target population. And I'm sure that you've heard about, what these mean. Duration, meaning the total number of weeks, sessions, or months. The dosage is how much, the number of hours per session, and then the target population, it has to be included in your logic model. You want to talk about your measurable outputs that result from delivering the intervention, the number of beneficiaries served, the types and numbers of activities conducted, and so on. And if applicable, identify which national performance measures will be used as output indicators. So when you go to the performance measures section for 2024, you know that those performance measures have little numbers. So if you're dealing with economic opportunity, for instance, that will usually, the number will be preceded by an O, or if it's education, by an E, or whatever that is. So, but put those numbers in of those performance measures that you're going to be using as outputs if you can, if you're going to be using national performance measures. If you're going to be using applicant determined performance measures, obviously you don't have to put those numbers in because those are determined by your organization. So in addition to outputs, you're going to talk about your outcomes that demonstrate your meaningful change. So this is what you want to, that shows either an increase or a decrease in a condition or in a knowledge or skill, attitude, behavior, or condition, and if applicable, again, identify which national performance measures will be used as outcome indicators. You want to align your outputs with your outcomes. You want it to be something that kind of flows from the output into the actual outcome itself. Okay. Programs should include short, medium, or long-term outcomes in the logic model. Applicants are not required to measure all components of their logic model. The applicant's performance measures should be consistent with the program's logic model and should represent significant program activities. Rationales and justifications should be informed by the organization's performance data. Program data observed over time that suggests targets are reasonable. Relevant research, targets documented by organizations running similar programs with similar populations or prior program evaluation findings. And then applicants with multiple interventions should complete one logic model chart which incorporates each intervention. Okay, logic model content that exceeds 8 pages will not be reviewed. So don't go over the 8 pages. Make sure that you use that review link to make sure you're within those 8 pages. Okay. Evidence-based, the assessment of an applicant's evidence base has 2 parts. This has not changed. Basically, you're going to assign an evidence tier to your application for up to 5 points. And you're going to use the mandatory supplemental information for the definition of what those tiers are. There is pre-preliminary, there's preliminary, there's moderate, and there's strong evidence. So please read those. Again, the CREES session will be defining those as well and kind of taking a deeper dive so that you understand what tier you are at, okay? Second, for 7 points, okay, of those 12 points will be the quality of the applicant's evidence and the degree to which it supports the proposed program design will be assessed and scored, okay? So you're looking at the quality of that evidence, and what you're looking at basically is looking at the relative strength of each applicant's evidence base. Okay, in order to qualify for consideration, the intervention evaluated in the submitted reports must match the intervention proposed by the applicant in the following areas. So when you determine what your tier is going to be, you're going to look at all of this information, the characteristics of the beneficiary's population, characteristics of the population delivering the intervention, the dosage, the context in which the intervention is delivered, and the outcome of the intervention, okay? So you're going to take a look at that and see how similar is that to your program, and then you're going to make a determination if it's pre-preliminary, preliminary, or so on, okay? For a description of the evidence tiers, as I mentioned before, go to the mandatory supplemental guidance. And applicants, this is important, okay? This is another shift. For programs that have been funded for more than 6 consecutive years, you should not be applying for pre-preliminary tier. It is expected that by this time in conducting AmeriCorps programs, that the program can demonstrate at a minimum a preliminary tier of evidence or higher, okay? You should have sufficient data to be able to apply for at least at a minimum a preliminary tier of evidence, okay? Now, if you are a program that has been funded for 6 years, 6 or more consecutive years, and you do not have a preliminary or higher tier of evidence because, for instance, perhaps you changed midstream in those 6 years in terms of what you were measuring and you don't have a lot of data, you would need to explain that. You would need to explain why you're still applying for pre-preliminary and how you plan to generate preliminary data or higher tier of evidence for the following formula application in February on FY25-26, which would be a continuation year. So you would have to kind of explain that, but you really, really, really should try to apply for at least a preliminary. Okay. All right. Evidence quality for 7 points. Basically, is the standards applied to assess quality of preliminary, moderate, or strong evidence. Will be determined by the methodology that is used in those studies, how relatively recent they are. So if it's anything that's more than 6 years, it's not relatively recent. Meaningful and positive effect on the beneficiaries. So you want to make sure that it is a positive effect on those beneficiaries in terms of the evidence that you're presenting. And if you are presenting pre-preliminary, the same information it should include past performance measure data or cited research studies. Okay. There's a lot more information on evidence quality. Just please be sure to read the NOFA, read the information, and read the mandatory supplemental guidance to guide you in the information that you need to provide under evidence quality. For performance measures for 8 points, you want to identify all of the components included in the logic model in your performance measures. Your performance measures provide for adequate and quality data collection, including instruments, and the applicant describes a data collection schedule, including a collection of baseline data. Data collection schedule is described in the narrative. So for your performance measures, they're going to be looking at the actual information you put into the performance measure link. However, in your narrative, you do want to talk about your data collection schedule. Okay, so when is it that you're going to measure for baseline data? Generally should be at the beginning of your program, so that midstream you have some basis for comparison, or at the end of the year you have basis for comparison. But you need to have a data collection schedule that defines, what information is going to be collected, when is it going to be collected, how often it's going to be collected throughout the year. Okay, and again, when are you going to be doing the baseline data? If you're going to be using AmeriCorps members to collect some of this data, you want to mention that as well, and how they're going to be trained also in the data collection process. And then, of course, when will you be tabulating information and so on. Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about member experience for 10 points. There's a lot more information in this one than in the competitive that is required, because we value the work that you do with the AmeriCorps members. It's not just about the impact in the community, although that is the primary impact of your program, but there's also impact that we want to see that takes place with the AmeriCorps members themselves. So describe the rationale by which you selected the number of members and slot types for your program. Describe how you plan to conduct the onboarding process and orientation on the first day of service to your cadre of members. Include training topics to be included in the orientation, including training on prohibited activities. You definitely want to mention prohibited activities, and how you're going to train them, and monitor that none of the activities are prohibited. AmeriCorps members, as a result of their service, will have opportunity to develop as leaders. So all of the types of opportunities you're going to give them to develop the leadership training, topics and timeline that will enable members to develop as leaders, and so on, service events that they'll be leading, meetings that they'll be conducting, and so on. AmeriCorps members will gain skills as a result of their training and service that can be utilized and will be valued by future employers. So career exploration, and again, what can they anticipate as life after AmeriCorps, and how will you help them to get there? You want to have a well-defined plan for recruitment of your AmeriCorps members from the geographic or demographic community. You know that recruitment has been an issue for several years. It is improving slowly, but again, it's important that you have a well thought out plan for recruitment as well as retention. Describe what a typical day looks like for your AmeriCorps members. One of the things that helps in retention is to make sure that they're fully engaged in service and that they're not, there's not big lapses of time where they don't have anything to do and those kinds of things. The applicant will foster an inclusive service culture where different backgrounds, talents, and capabilities are welcomed. And, sorry, the applicant's organization has a diversity, equity, and inclusion council or DEIA plan that seeks to diversify its staff. You can also indicate that you will be part of the commission's DEIA council, which we have meetings, I think it's every month or every other month that you will participate in. That's one of the options that you have as well. Okay, so we're done with member experience. Pretty much that's all of the information we're asking for in that section. Now we jump to organizational capability. And again, this is only 2 sections. The first one is talking about your organization's background and the staffing. You want to talk about the roles, responsibilities, and structure of the staff that's going to be implementing the program. You're going to talk a little bit about whether or not you have an educational or workforce development program, pre-apprenticeships. Not all programs do, but if you do have this, please talk about it, or how you will plan to perhaps reach out to your workforce development programs in your local communities, or colleges or whatever to assist your program as well. The applicant describes their organization's mission and relevant experience in areas such as volunteer recruitment and management, community outreach, and project implementation challenges. And again, a statement including the plan to advance diversity, equality, and DEIA. Okay. Member supervision for 13 points. The applicant details how AmeriCorps members will receive sufficient guidance and support from their supervisor to provide effective service. So if they're going to be placed in a site where they're going to be managed by site supervisors, and your program director really is kind of a central person that works with the site supervisor, not so much directly with the AmeriCorps members, you definitely want to talk about how those site supervisors will meet on a regular basis, how often they will meet, for check-ins, for supervision opportunities to assess strengths and opportunities for growth, member training plans, and all of that. And then you want to talk about how your supervisors will be adequately trained and prepared to follow AmeriCorps and program regulations, priorities, and expectations as well. Okay. Cost effectiveness and budget adequacy for 25 points. Okay, so there's a couple of sections here that are kind of new. So the applicant provides for member recruitment. You want to make sure that your description of your budget expenses supports successful recruitment of AmeriCorps members best suited to serve in the community from the geographic or demographic communities. So recruitment costs that you might have, whether it's announcements, whether it's social media, Zoom, whatever you want to do, however, whatever those costs may be, maybe a meeting in your local community where you encourage different organizations to attend a meeting to help you recruit from those organizations, whatever that is. Member retention, the applicant provides a description of budget expenses to support retention of AmeriCorps members, additional member benefits such as increasing above the minimum living allowance. So if you're going to be trying to retain members with a higher stipend amount, this is where you want to talk a little bit about that. Supporting workforce pathways, certifications, coaching for members, resume building, helping those members to become successful in life after AmeriCorps. Any of those costs, you may want to bring somebody in to do perhaps like, I don't know, Myers-Briggs or whatever you think that would help. It could be member recognition. Maybe you want to do a special event for those members to recognize them. Things that will retain those members and make them feel valued, that their service is being valued. Some of these are, can be not expensive ways of doing this, so, but it could be, it's something that you want to be able to have some costs in your budget related to retention. And then budget alignment to program design. The applicant's budget is aligned to the program design. Okay, so again, as I mentioned before, nothing extraneous that really shouldn't, that's not related to your program design. And then budget accuracy. All of this information, as I mentioned before, you want to make sure that your cost per MSY is equal or less than the maximum cost per MSY of $25,000. So that is your ceiling, $25,000 per member. So for per FT, per member service year. So if you have 10 MSYs times 25,000, you know that you're looking at 250,000 is the most you can apply for. The source of match information. Okay, this is something that typically many of our programs forget to do. In the section 3 of the budget, up on the top, when you open that section up in the budget in eGrants, there is a source of fund matching funds section that needs to be filled out. Please make sure you fill that out. Do not leave it blank or you will lose points. Okay. And then, you know, all of the other things like, you know, complying with the budget instructions, making sure that that you provide calculations of how you arrived at travel costs, and all of those things. Okay. All right. Term of service and living allowance. Okay, so these are the new minimum living allowance totals. You have to provide your full-time AmeriCorps member at least $18,700. The maximum that they can make as an AmeriCorps member in their stipend is $37,400. And then these are all of the other related costs per, depending on the slot types that you choose for your program. Again, as in prior years, you can have only, you know, decide to use just full-time or just half-time or a combination of any of these. And you want to be able to justify why you chose those particular slot types, how it makes sense in your program design, and so forth. Okay, and then these are the related MSYs and the minimum number of hours. We still have abbreviated time and, you know, for anything from full-time to abbreviated time. So, okay. Matching requirements have not changed depending on your year of how many years you've had AmeriCorps. As I mentioned before, you can apply for a match waiver, and I have seen programs that normally would have to provide 24%, not have to provide anything in terms of match. And other programs who were at 50% perhaps go down to like 33% or 38% or something. So it is definitely worth it to fill out that match waiver. But for the application itself, you do need to indicate which year you are at and provide the match, provide information on how you plan to provide that match level until you get that match waiver if you apply for it. Okay, we will continue to take a portion of 1 or 2% depending on how many AmeriCorps MSYs there are. So programs requesting 12 or less MSYs do not have to allocate any portions of the administrative allowance for the commission. Programs requesting 13 to 17 MSYs should allocate 1%. And here, these are the formulas that you would follow to put that in the correct Section 3 portion of your budget. And programs requesting 18 or more MSYs would allocate 2% of their administrative costs. All right. You would follow the application instructions for the 2024 to submit this. And the link is in the table of contents of the Formula NOFO. As in prior years, starting strong, 3 days during the end of July. Typically, we have not planned starting strong yet, so we're not sure of those dates, but they'll be coming soon. So just be on the lookout for that if you do get funded. The Ask National Service Training is typically 3 days. You will budget for that as well. For starting strong, you don't have to budget for registration. We don't charge any registration, but you would, if you're going to be staying overnight, you would need to budget for your overnight dinner costs and things like that. We cover breakfast and lunch, but we don't cover the overnight stay. And the Ask National Service Training is for 3 days. We do try to get a reduced price for that based on funds that we provide to ask, so that our programs can go at a more reduced registration. But you would have to provide funding for not only registration, but also travel and for some of the food. I'm not sure exactly what they provide. It varies from conference to conference. And then other training would be career day, site supervisor training. Again, there's no registration cost for this, but there's travel costs that are generally involved for both the members and program directors during the contract period. You would participate in all monthly conference calls or meetings, and in constructing the budget, figure in the cost for transportation, meals, and possible overnight accommodations related to all AmeriCorps or commission training sessions. As in prior years, AmeriCorps launch generally takes place October of 2024, and the end of year training either in May or June of 2025. And hopefully this year we're not doing the career day because we are doing the GOV conference, but in the 24-25 year, we anticipate we will be doing a career day for the members. This generally is a very popular day for those members. And generally that takes place in March. Additional resources, again, you want to take a look at AmeriCorps.gov for any tutorials, evidence checklists, logic model instructions, frequently asked questions. The AmeriCorps terms and conditions, you should review those, but you should also be familiar with most of that. And then the full regulations under ECFR is also provided a link to that online if you go to AmeriCorps.gov, just to find out all the things that you're responsible for in running this program. Okay. And our contact information, that hasn't changed as well. And if you have questions, please stay after this session for the Q&A on February 15th. After that, if you have other questions, you can always contact us, and we will post those questions or share that information with anyone else who is interested in applying for an operating grant. Okay? All right, this concludes this session for today. Good luck. And again, if you are interested, please let us know by submitting the intent to apply by the due date. Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
So we're back. Does anyone have any questions after that presentation? This is the time to ask it. If you have questions.
Yeah, it's Abha. I have a question.
Sure.
So in the NOFO, like right before the table, where it talks about amount of funding in MSY that you can apply for,
Yes.
above that it's at 27,000. I guess that's probably what it was. So it should change.
Yeah, it's 25,000.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because as you go further down in the NOFO, it does say 25,000 at the bottom.
Yeah.
So that was a little confusing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then relating to the same, I have a question. So you said it's 25,000 max per MSY, but in the other table, it said full-time can be 37 something. Like
That's for programs who have are recompeting. You would be applying with a maximum of 15 MSYs because you are a current planning grant. And so the only reason we allow programs who are recompeting is because a lot of them have been operating at a much higher level of with AmeriCorps, but because we see that we no longer have ARP funds for next year, we've had to shrink down the amount that we can fund, but we're allowing programs who've been operating for 6 years or more at those higher levels to apply for a few more MSYs.
actually, my question is more about, like in the table, it says the minimum amount you need to pay as a stipend to the member, and then there's a maximum amount that you can pay to a particular member.
Yes. Okay. So the stipend amount is different from the MSYs. Okay. The cost per MSY, and a lot of people get those confused. But the actual amount that you would have to pay your members, it's according to that chart. So how many members are you specifically? I'm just trying to find the chart here just so that I can,
Right. So let's say if a applicant applies for 15 MSY, they're going to get maximum $375,000.
no, it's not the members that are going to get that. It's your organization that's going to get that.
Right. So the
And
organizations get 375.
right.
So if we paid 25,000 for a full-time member, then there's no money left in the budget for anything else.
Probably. I mean, I haven't calculated that out, but here's the thing. The 25,000 is just a number in order to understand how much you can apply for in federal funds. You don't have to pay your members $25,000. You have to provide your full-time members at least, I think it was 18,700 in the chart.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to provide those members at least $18,700. And the ones that are less than full-time, whatever is in that
Yeah.
column, okay? So you should have some funds left over for your operating and for other things. Not a lot. This program is not about, giving your organization a lot of operating funds. That is why there is an expectation for you to be able to acquire match.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that makes
And Abba, we are going to have a special session on just developing the budget for planning grants so that they get a better idea. Because our recompeting programs have had many years of experience of how to do this, but planning grants are still learning. So you'll get more information on that. And I'll give you a couple of samples and a couple of creative ways of how to make those dollars stretch.
okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Hi, I see a question in the chat. Can capacity building measures be used as a performance measure?
So we discourage capacity building as a performance measure because the goal of AmeriCorps is to create impact in the community, not for an organization. And capacity building is more about trying to create improvements within the organization. So can you do capacity building? Yes, but not as your primary performance measures. That has to be, you have to have performance measures that are based on, one of the 6 focus areas. The other thing is for your performance measures, you do have to have at least one aligned performance measure, and they'll go over this in the session with CREES, where you have at least one output and one aligned outcome that kind of flow from each other. So you have to have at least that. It can't be a program that's just based on outputs. Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
So in terms of asking for MSY for next year, if you requested 10 this previous year, can you request more than 10 next year or no?
Yes.
I can.
Yes. Yes. You're recompeting. This is an opportunity for you to assess how well you did in the last 3 years. And do you want to apply for, a different configuration of slots, different number of MSYs? Yeah, you can do that.
Okay.
Now. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm. By the way, for those programs that have PHA programs and are waiting to hear about their continuation funding, we just heard, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that CDC found an additional $50 million. So they will be probably funding your program. They will use unexpended funds from your program, and you'll be filling out some information on that. I believe it's in April. So
End of March?
was it
30th?
the end of March?
Yeah.
Okay. So end of March, you'll be getting these forms. You'll be putting unexpended funds. And so if you requested, let's say, $300,000 for funding for that continuation, and you have $50,000 left in unexpended funds from this year, then they would give you the additional 250,000. So that's how that will work. Okay. So that's a good thing because we were not sure if they were going to be able to find the money for most of the programs or all of the programs. And even then, we're not sure. I mean, we're not still sure if they may have to cut them down a little bit. So there's still some stuff up in the air, but it certainly sounded very reassuring that they found additional funds.
Hi, we have a question about which NOFA to select in eGrants.
Okay, so I have not set up the primes. I will be doing that today after this presentation. And we will send you out the information along with instructions on how to open up your application. I always do that every year. So you'll get a separate email on that. You know, with the specific number. Okay, Marie, I hear you. You're always ahead of the game here. Thank you.
Here's another question related to budget. It says 375,000. Like I'm just using that as a number maximum for the formula grant.
Mhm.
And then below that it says for 3 years, right? So is that 375,000 for the 3
For
year?
each year, for each,
Okay.
so each year it's going to change because the cost for MSY typically changes each year. And each year, generally, the stipend amounts for the AmeriCorps members also increases. So there's sometimes what happens is you have to pay your members a little bit more, but the cost per MSY doesn't budge. And so now you have to really think about, can I actually bring in all the members that I brought in last year, or do I have to, you know, maybe do one less or whatever that is, or find additional funds from some other source as matching funds so that you can continue to pay your members the required amounts that AmeriCorps sets.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, good question. Anyone else? Okay. All right, if you have additional questions, please send them to our email, americorps.newjersey@sos.nj.gov. And we will try to, you know, be available to answer all of your questions and moving forward, okay? Okay, Ally, thank you. All right, so this concludes today's session. And again, we will get back to you on hopefully a sample budget, as well as instructions, more detailed instructions on the actual prime that you have to open up to create your application soon. Okay. All righty. Good luck.
Thank you.